Hey associates, this mini lecture explains technical descriptions and I'm going to react to some examples out from the professional world. Now, technical descriptions are more of a writing strategy and mindset than a true type of document or standardized form. They can exist alone, by themselves, like an index page in a company wiki or as your README file on a code project. But more often, you're going to find them existing inside of other documents, such as a technical description of your equipment inside of the larger manual or SOP. Because of that flexibility, I'm going to break down what topics and concepts tend to be included in a strong technical description so you can make it useful, usable, and enjoyable for that audience before we hop into those examples. Obviously, describing something like a rocket ship is technical and easy to imagine. But we can also write a technical description for art topics, things we may not associate with technical writing as closely. Like if I needed to explain how and why oil painting restoration and conservation works, I'd use a technical description. Often when we interact with other people, we need to describe what is going on around us, and that need, especially in our STEM workplace environments, becomes a technical description. So the purpose and goal of a technical description is to explain the usually hard, unfamiliar, novel, and technically based topics to audiences that need to understand really how and why they work. They're usually written in a functional way. Remember our lecture about scholarly, functional, interpretive, and effective ways to present information? Well, the functional form focuses on why and how things work, with the emphasis on really helping people understand that form. So, some of the types of descriptions. We're going to focus on the 4 most common categories of descriptions and what they entail. Process descriptions explain how something works or happens in kind of a step-by-step way. We have instructional processes about how a particular task, procedure, or operation is performed, and non-instructional. We're focused on the non-instructional processes for today because instructional technical writing is honestly a bigger thing in itself that does get a whole unit in this class. In non-instructional processes, the goal isn't to guide someone through doing it themselves. Instead, is to provide a clear understanding of the sequence of events just involved in a process. Think more of functional, operational, or systemic information. Think about how a 4-stroke internal combustion engine works. It's a process that has 4 central stages converting fuel into energy. And this happens no matter what brand, power, or size of ICE you're working with. So it presents the process. However, you might turn to our second type of description to describe a specific engine's brand. So mechanical descriptions detail the components and workings of mechanical systems. Often, you might need to pair a process description with the mechanical description, like if you were writing your documentation for your F1 team's new engine design for the upcoming season. You can focus on the mechanical description of your designs with connections to the combustion process. When writing a mechanical description, explain how the system or components operate, including the principles behind why and how they function. Describe how the different parts interact and work together too. And go ahead and explain the pathway of energy, fluids, or materials that might move through your mechanical system. Provide information on performance metrics such as capacity, speed, load limits, and any other operational aspects. And last, you can highlight potential issues and common problems that may arise with your maintenance procedures and those special safety elements incorporated into the design. When we work with physical things, it can be, more of that tactile, see, feel, observe what to describe that makes it easier. But sometimes we need to describe things that are intangible, such as code. So, code documentation provides explanations for code snippets, functions, or entire programs. Your documentation refers to the written text comments within the source code, explaining how it works, its purpose, and how to use it. Good code documentation ensures that the code is maintainable and understandable by your other developers. There are a lot of formats that heavily depend on the language, system, and your dev team setup, but apart from those kind of minor presentation details, your code documentation will include inline comments that explain specific lines or blocks of code, function descriptors for different parameters and returns, and class definitions. These comments and tags are written directly into the code to help people actively, up in there working with it. Otherwise, we have README files, and I do love the labeling of that. These are external files that go along with the code to explain the project title, what it's about, what it does, installation, setup, running instructions, as well as usage examples with code snippets. You'll have your contribution, license, and contact information of the producer too. Now, since so much of dev culture is through an open access or very collaborative licensing, writing clear code documentation and README files supports that development principle. They are so critical that GitHub, our leading code repo, will recognize and even automatically surface your README files to your repository so visitors can find it. READMEs can be written in any form, technically, but the most common is Markdown, which produces a .md extension. So when you're looking at a repo, look for that readme.md to find the README files that the coder provided. And last, product descriptions provide essential information about a product. They typically include features, benefits, specifications, and other relevant details designed to inform potential customers. Product descriptions and the technical writers who often help create these go alongside marketing materials, though they are not the same thing. Advertisements typically focus more on heuristic features to help with persuasion and actually get them into the sales funnel, while product descriptions provide more concrete information to kind of solidify and help them make the final decision. Now, a few key elements. Don't overthink this, all right? While descriptions come in a lot of different formats and mediums and styles, they all share a common goal of honestly just talking about what your thing is, what it does, and how it works. A key element that should be first in your description is a technical definition, because that's how you're going to explain what the thing is to then set up what it does and how it works. A technical definition is more detailed and field-specific than a dictionary definition. For example, force is defined in physics with precise measurements and formulas, right, in relation to Newton's laws, and contextual applications for professionals in engineering, scientific research, people who use physics. But the dictionary definition says strength or energy, an attribute of physical action or movement, or makes someone do something against their will. Very different, both correct definitions. To write a technical definition, start with this basic formula and then expand out as you need. You'll do your term plus category of thing plus identifying features equals the components of a tech definition. That formula sets up a sentence definition, which is usually enough to introduce a technical description or even stand alone as a glossary entry. But you can scale up the formula for an expanded definition. It may cover the term's history, functionality, significance, and examples. And last, we do have parenthetical definitions, which are used for just quick clarifications inside of a sentence. Usually these are going to be for like acronyms and abbreviation type stuff. So, for example, parenthetical definition. What is a CPU? The sentence definition, a central processing unit, CPU, is a hardware component that's the core computational unit in a server. And expanded definition, a central processing unit, CPU, is a hardware component that's the core computational unit in a server. Servers and other smart devices convert data into digital signals and perform mathematical operations on them. The CPU is the primary component that processes the signals and makes computing possible. It acts as the brain of any computing device. It fetches instructions from memory, performs the required tasks, and sends output back to the memory. It handles all the computing tasks required for running the operating system and applications. AWS's technical description of a CPU builds from that parenthetical into the sentence into the expanded definition, which they actually use as the introduction for a larger technical description on that component. Now, after your definition handles what is the thing in your description, just explain what it does and how it works. So let's react and check out some examples. So on the World Health Organization page, right, they have various health topics, featured stories, and this one on how do vaccines work. So it's going to be a process description because they are just explaining development, distribution, and how vaccines work inside of our body. So it's not explaining necessarily the procedures, the steps for how a person would make a vaccine. It's more right of that non-instructional process, just generally how do they work. So we start off with just kind of that introduction, good purpose statement, so we know it's about vaccine development. And then they have some kind of like opening context, including some definitions. Here's a parenthetical definition of a pathogen. And so that's, kind of setting up sort of some context, some background for vaccines. So we went from sort of this very brief kind of single parenthetical into the sentence level, right? So we have, here's what the thing is, right? A pathogen, the type, right? It's a bacterium, virus, parasite, and then sort of its defining features, like what it does. So we have that basic formula, and then they expanded it into this whole paragraph. And they even included some diagrams, and so a lot of technical descriptions will have visuals, lots of diagrams to walk people through what it is that we're looking at. Seeing this one, it is a little bit more, cartoony, rather than kind of super hard lines, or you can see the font style, right, is a little bit more of like a handwritten, and it's very colorful, which is an indicator that it is made for, right, more of that interpretive, affective, like a general audience that have kind of less background, motivation, skill, knowledge. And so they just kind of make it honestly a little bit more like fun, enjoyable, and understandable than a complete or maybe proper, really technical diagram. Oh, look at that. Perfect technical definition. We have our thing, a vaccine. What kind of category, what sort of type of thing is it? It's basically a tiny, weakened, non-dangerous fragment of the organism. And then kind of some more qualities of it. Goes in with the antigen. Here's what it does. Here's how to operate. So we get that kind of extended definition of what a vaccine is. So that's really cool. And then last is pretty common of technical descriptions to put any additional kind of information, link sources at the end. So this example of a process description, right, is sort of just getting into what is happening inside of our body, that kind of biological process, with how antigens and these existing antibodies sort of work, are developed as that process. And so they have a whole bunch of different manuals. Again, technical descriptions typically don't exist completely on their own. Usually they are related or inside of some other material when you're actually seeing them kind of at work. For example, with all of these sort of documents and specs. So I'm looking for like an example of mechanical one. So I'm going to open up this electromechanical assemblies. And some good tenets of technical writing already here. We got our table of contents, got all these kind of details, author, and notice, right, this was written by the engineering kind of management person, Derek Brown. So you don't have to be a technical writer to need to write some of these descriptions for your team. And so they start off with purpose scope. Just always make sure to have a nice purpose statement. Love to see that. And let's jump down into mechanical fasteners. So they have a heading for definitions. Love that. Let's see how it follows, or if it follows. Standing burr is a thing. It's a deformation of material, the category type of thing, and then some of the details that make it up. So we have absolutely following that basic formula. Same here, they're keeping it just at that sentence rather than expanding it out. And now they have some illustrations with really good kind of labeling to help us kind of visualize these different kind of mechanical elements of these fasteners that are important. This definitely doesn't have like a lot of content, obviously tons of bullet points. I would definitely love to see a tiny bit more context to help me understand, but for the people who are working directly right inside of this job kind of day in, day out, they need a quick reference. I do understand why they might design it this way. What about some hardware mounting? Okay, here are a lot of the different components of the fastening hardware mounting. Kind of like mechanics, we get longer, a little bit explanations of all the different materials. Definitely this is what I was expecting to see a lot more of as well, type of material, and some of the size type of specs are really kind of critical, important for mechanical descriptions, since you are trying to explain actual components, how they fit together, what they're doing, what they're made of, and what to look for. Cool. Oh, I'm over on GitHub for the Pandas dev. And so in this kind of side panel, right, we have all sorts of files, and this is where you can get the various kind of specific Cody stacks, but I located that readme.md. That's pretty much what it always should be called. And so when we hop in, GitHub does kind of open it up in more of a visual format. But if you prefer to look at a readme file in more of that true in the code, like that more raw markdown way, we can also read it this way. We know that we have a heading 1 here, heading 2 with the 2 little hashtags, right? Kind of tells us what our main topics and what our subtopics as we're kind of going through. And then you can actually, read the content this way. So if you are, right, we have our license information, that's going to be key, various documentation, getting help. All of those are absolutely key things contributing to Pandas that we kind of expect to see in various README files. They, had this nice little source picture indicating very clearly, right, whose sort of code this is, which is really nice to see. I love that, right? Lots of little notes, right? This should be bold is what that means. So we flip back over. Do we see it as bold? We do. And so it's always kind of fun to toggle back and forth between sort of the markdown version, the code version, and the sort of more rendered out preview. Because I think it's kind of fun to get used to that. But anyway, yes, we see. What is it? Pandas, the thing, is a category, Python package. What are some of the defining features? Provides fast, flexible, expressive data structures, designed, blah, 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 right? And then they kind of continue on. So this is beginning, right, their documentation, beginning their description, right, their code description with a really good definition, right? So just basically, you can never go wrong starting with a little extended definition. Then they have their table of contents. That's where we see main features. Again, describe what it does, how it works. That's your goal. What is it? What does it do? How does it work? So main features. Then we get, right, our installation, like where to get it, some little code snips, and see full instructions for installing. So you also want to link how do people get set up with the program, and getting help, how to contribute. Ideas are welcome. They have a contribution guide, so you would want to look at that to make sure you have everything sort of correct that you need and that they want to do. Yeah, really great simple example. And these don't have to be crazy long paragraphs of things, but just make sure that you explain what is it, what does it do, how does it work, and especially for READMEs, then we expect to get some of that installation, development, contribution, and possibly licensing stuff. They have their own little tab for more kind of licensing and copyright information. So some people put it together, some people break it up, but it should be pretty easy to kind of find overall. All right, and last is a product description. So right on the front, right, this would be marketing materials, right? It is, flashy, it's fun, it's tapping into more of those heuristic, which are kind of our mental shortcuts, tapping more into like feelings, emotions, vibes of like, yeah, I do want to enjoy making, exceptional espresso. That sounds really cool. Look how pretty. Oh, it fits into my home. All of those are marketing strategies that are really helpful to engage initial people and kind of get us on board. Then sort of the marketing materials move over into more of the product description, the technical writing side. Now I'm on the actual models, right? And this is where we really get into that kind of key info. So if we were to compare these two models, it should show us the technical description for each. We have our product overview, and we don't tend to do definitions as much on product descriptions, just because if somebody's looking to buy it, they probably already know and understand what it is. It doesn't have to be defined the same way the other kind of technical descriptions do. Instead, we get to focus kind of right on just a nice little product overview, things like the color, the materials, what are those key kind of features that it has. And then we can start getting into, again, more details. A lot of product descriptions are written also as, a table. The last key thing of a product description, especially in this kind of more technical space, are going to be the dimensions, right? So you got to tell people, how much does it weigh? How tall is it? How wide is it? How deep is it? And so this is the info that helps people truly make those purchasing decisions, because they just need to know the actual what's going on. Here they also get into some of those electrical kind of stuff. Let's recap what we covered today. So we went over what are technical descriptions, what are technical definitions, and 4 examples of sort of real professional world descriptions that had different types of audience styles. This video directly applies to a lot of your careers anytime you need to describe something to other people, so I hope you saw those clear connections. Thanks, associates. Vibes!